Chairman, I appreciate the nominees' willingness to serve and distinguished backgrounds, all three of you. Just brief comment, I have not looked at the OLC legal opinion, and I probably shouldn't speak, but I will. As Associate Counsel in the first Bush administration and then as OMB Director in the second one, it was often frustrating dealing with Congress, but I felt it was my responsibility to provide information. And the branch that you're now before has the opportunity to confirm you or deny your confirmation, and that's because that's the way the founders set it up. And they also set it up so that we would have the opportunity to do oversight, and the elected representatives, each of us representing, in my case, over 11 million people, expect us to do that oversight. So I do hope that the information will be forthcoming to this committee, and I know the chairman feels the same way, that this is our responsibility. I've got so many questions, but let me just start, if I could, with you, Mr. Vogt. And again, you're stepping up to take on a very tough job. I relied heavily on the deputy at OMB when I was there. It's as you know, there's a deputy for management and also one more for the budget functions, and you'll have a lot of interaction with OIRA should you be confirmed. So it's good you guys are sitting close together. That may not be true in a couple of years. After you have some clashes. No, just kidding. I'm sure you'll get along great. But let me focus on one thing that was mentioned earlier, and that's infrastructure. Today, the President's in my hometown of Cincinnati talking about infrastructure. I'm delighted he's doing that. He's going to talk about locks and dams in the Ohio River, and he's going to talk, I hope, about broader infrastructure questions. On Friday, he's supposed to be talking about permitting. I know you're not there yet, and when you were at Heritage Action, you guys actually opposed the highway bill that had this in it. I hope you didn't oppose the permitting reform. I don't think you did. I think, in fact, you would have been supportive of that had you been asked to opine on that separately. But Title 41 of the FAST Act has the permitting reform that was talked about earlier, and it is absolutely needed. I mean, we have projects that, on the Ohio River, as an example, including some of our dams that have taken 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and capital is not that patient anymore. It goes somewhere else, and it doesn't just go to another state, it goes to another country. And so our reform effort, and Senator McCaskill and I did this together on a bipartisan basis for 5 years, worked on it. We had the Chamber of Commerce, the manufacturers and others with us. We also had the AFL-CIO Building Trades Council with us because they all wanted jobs, and they saw what was happening. We took the statute of limitations, for instance, from 6 years down to 2 years after a NEPA review. Our original bill actually was even shorter than that, but that's a huge change right there. We have this dashboard now where citizens are able to get transparency, to be able to see what the status is of a project, one agency in charge, which is really important because the right hand often doesn't know what the left hand is doing. We have energy projects in Ohio where 35 different permits are sometimes required, sometimes sequentially. And so it's, the effort is just to make it more efficient. And we set up this thing called the Federal Permitting Improvement Steering Council, FPSI. It sits at OMB. And I fought hard to get it to OMB and not to CEQ, where some other folks wanted it, because we believed OMB had some leverage. And I think Senator McCaskill will tell you, we went back and forth on this quite a bit, and she took some heat on it. But we wanted to put it somewhere where you had a part of the government, OMB, that actually has some leverage over the other agencies and departments, partly because of the budget function that you'll be very involved with. So are you, one, aware of this issue of the permitting reform, the need for it, and the legislation that we've already passed? And are you aware of the fact that this FPSI organization has not been stood up, that we don't have an executive director? There's an acting person there now. And do you have thoughts on why that is and why we can't get this going?
Thank you, Senator. I am aware of the Permitting Council. I'm aware it's a priority for the administration. Funding was included in the President's budget for it. Specifically in regard to the impact that it has in order to leverage the types of reforms and spending that we need as an administration to be able to get $1 trillion of investment into infrastructure spending. I can't speak to why there's been a delay in setting up the council, but from a funding aspect, it's been a priority of the administration.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, and I hope you personally will roll up your sleeves and get involved in this, because I do think it's incredibly important as we're trying to figure out how to spend tax dollars more efficiently. I mean, the dollar is going to be much more valuable if it's in the context of a permitting reform effort where we don't have to go through these long delays and additional costs. Are you looking for any additional authorities on this? Do you know any other thing we need to do in Congress to be helpful?
It's not something that I've inquired in yet because I haven't been confirmed, but if confirmed, Senator, it would be something that I would want to inquire upon and to seek advice within the OMB as to ways that we can improve the statute.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and what I'm asking for today is your personal commitment that should you be confirmed that you will be supportive of getting FIPSI set up and using the authorities we've already given you on a bipartisan basis, which is rare around here, to actually make a difference and not just talk about it, but actually implement it.
You have that, Senator.
I appreciate that. Ms. Rao, thank you very much again for your willingness to serve. Wow, what a background. You've been involved in regulatory affairs for a long time. Senator Heitkamp and I have legislation that Senator Hatch talked about. He's one of the original co-sponsors called the Regulatory Accountability Act. I assume you're aware of the Regulatory Accountability Act. Have you followed that?
Yes, I have.
I know that there is a lot of interest in trying to find some way to get the independent agencies into a more systematic cost-benefit analysis like the executive branch agencies. Do you support what we're trying to do there to tell the independent agencies they too have to go through a cost-benefit analysis?
Thank you, Senator. I think that the question about the independent agencies is a very important one and has been considered over the years, I mean, pretty much since the inception of OIRA, you know, should we be including the independent agencies? And I think that in principle, it makes a lot of sense to have the independent agencies follow the same cost-benefit analysis as other agencies. And that was a position reflected in the Obama administration, and it's a position, you know, I know that's in the Regulatory Accountability Act as well.
With regard to look back, Senator Heitkamp improved the legislation this year by putting a retrospective review in, requiring agencies to review the most expensive regulations they already have in the books at least once every 10 years. How do you feel about that?
Senator, I think retrospective review is a really important issue, and one, you know, because at the outset when a regulation is proposed, even with the best analysis, there's only a prediction about costs and benefits. And so being able to look back to see how a regulation has actually worked, what its actual effects were, its costs and benefits is very important, especially to reducing the regulatory burden of ineffective or out-of-date regulations.
Okay, my time is up. I've already stolen Senator Heitkamp's question, so she's already mad at me. But my question to you, would you commit to work with us on a bipartisan basis to try to get this Regulatory Accountability Act through the process? It was marked up by this committee, Chairman, 2 weeks ago, with your support and help, and thank you. And it's, you know, it's common sense stuff, and we need help from the administration to ensure that we can get this done. Do you make that commitment today?
Yes, Senator, I'd be happy to commit to working with the committee on your regulatory reform proposals. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.